Hello, everybody. This is 12 Gauge. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping on in and taking a look. I hope you find something that interests you, something that intrigues you, or something that even tickles your analytical mind. This channel, I try to make it about facts, I try to make it about situations that people can understand rather than things that can be totally speculatory or conspiracy. If I do use some situations as speculatory, I try to use my own life because I have lived a life, that hasn't been that perfect because I'm not perfect. So, you know, I try to I try to ingest my own situation so that I can give insight on what I'm talking about. Today I decided to talk about voyeurism, or is it stalking? In the Idaho 4K, that's what I'm going to be talking about today as well, because it's been a huge topic about Brian Koberger supposedly had stalked the individuals on social media, and also that he rode by their house at least 12 times before the murder. So I want to get an understanding of what the difference between stalking and voyeurism, or if they go hand in hand. So if you like what I present, please leave a comment, please leave a like, or subscribe, or tell your friends about my channel and see if they can find something of interest over here. And if I get enough subs, hopefully one day I'll be able to go live and we'll be able to talk about certain situations like this live instead of just using the recorded videos. I'm going to start by sharing an article that was about 6 years old. Even though it's 6 years old, I'm sure the information has not been outdated because it's stuff that's been talked about for decades and decades. Stalking just didn't begin, and there's certain things that stalking behavior should be um, placed as criminalistic, but we'll talk about that later. Okay, so stalking behavior has been identified in 9 to 10 murders studied by criminologists as part of the research examining a link between the two crimes. The 6-month study of the University of Gloucestershire found stalking was present in 94% of the 358 cases of criminal homicide they looked at. Surveillance activity, including covert watching, was recorded 63% of the time. The Susie Lampall Trust, which runs the National Stalking Helpline, warned the failure to take action on stalking could lead to an escalation in violence and potentially death. It is called on courts to recognize stalking as a broader problem and pattern of behavior. The chief executive of the trust, Rachel Griffin, says stalking is an obsession which can increase in risk and severity and needs to be addressed under early intervention model. Okay, let's continue on. It's talking about what the charity does. Um, they try to pilot intervention programs and focus on the fixation of the stalker. According to the researchers, 85% of homicides occurred in the victim's home. A doctor, Smith, a former police officer turned criminologist, found in almost every case the killer displayed the obsessive, fixated behavior associated with stalking. So let's look at that a minute. You know, it's been stated in numerous articles, and I think News Nation reported on it, and some others. Even during the trial, not trial, but like some of the appearances before the judge, I I remember seeing one on court TV where it stated Brian Koberger stalked the victims on social media, on Instagram or something of that sort. So that's online stalking. That's the difference between pulling up to the house and sitting there with your binoculars looking in the window, or even walking up to the house, peeping inside, looking in, see what you can find. If he did have an obsessive um, connection to one of the victims, or maybe more than one of the victims, I'm sure he did find out exactly where this house was rather quickly. And as you could see on the victim's social media pages, they did post a lot about their lives. They posted a lot of pictures. They posted a lot of things that many people generally do on a daily basis. There's nothing they did that was any different than what many people do on a daily basis. So 85% of homicides occur in the victim's home. That is a huge number. Stalking could present itself as acts such as rearranging a victim's garden furniture, sending unwanted gifts, loitering on the pavement outside their house, or even calling social services to maliciously report poor parenting. Okay, I never knew this, so this is interesting to me. Acts of rearranging a victim's garden furniture, unwanted gifts, or loitering in the pavement outside their house, or even calling social services. I know this is speculation here, but I'm gonna step out on that limb and hope it doesn't break. Could Brian have been the one that called the noise complaints? Could he have been the one that observed how quickly the police got there? Who answered the door and which perimeter the door was answered? How easily it was to get in and out of that location? Because it says, stalkers can even call social services to tell on the person they're stalking about how terrible of a parent they are. So why couldn't they call the police? Why wouldn't they call the police for a complaint so that you could really get a good look at who it is that you're stalking? And if you notice in those police cam videos, you saw almost every roommate. You saw Kaylee, you saw Xana, you saw supposedly Bethany. The only ones you didn't see were Maddie and Dylan. Well, Dylan was in the one where you saw Kaylee, but she was running off, you know, and Kaylee came out. So maybe he was watching, exploring how fast calling in a complaint would get these police to show up and what locations they would come and check it out. Because they were called during the day, they were called at night. That one time it was 2 times in one day. It said Moncton Smith and Susie Lamplow Trust have called on criminal justice professionals to review their approach on assisting risk so the 1 to 1 million victims of stalking every year can receive greater protection. Practically every case we looked at featured examples of the obsessive fixated behavior that typifies stalking. There's that word again, obsessive, fixated. And you've heard these words when associated with the victims of the crime. The person was fixated on the roommates. The person seemed to know these individuals. Sadly, it's too late for the women and children that form part of our research, so we need to do justice in their memory by acting earlier when stalkers are demonstrating these behaviors. Understanding the motivation behind these behaviors and the risk of the present is profoundly important. It says, I hope you appreciated this article. And it continues on to talk about the stalking situation there. Just stop sharing this page. It really wasn't as informative as I thought it was going to be. Let's look at this one on most killers stalk their victims on social media before they do anything to them. This comes from the Daily Mail. It says most killers stalk their victims on social media before murdering them, say criminologists. 6-month study showed a strong correlation between stalking and homicides. Criminologists found stalking behavior present in 94% of the cases they studied. Once again, that 94%. There's that 85% of the murders occurred in the victim's home. Wow. The majority of killers stalk their victims on social media before murdering them. A study of more than 350 homicides suggests. So be careful what you put on social media. I mean, it may seem innocent, and this has been something that's been talked about since the beginning of social media. Be careful what you put on there. What it says the results of a 6-month study claim that it's a strong correlation between some key stalking behaviors and homicides. Criminologists found that stalking was present in 94% of the cases they studied, and surveillance activity was recorded 63% of the time. Escalation of concerning behaviors was identified in 79% of the examples. Other factors highlighted were the isolation of the victim and making threats to kill. The 6-month study at the University of Gloucestershire found that by identifying the intention behind the stalking may reveal supportive opportunities to save lives. According to the researchers, 85% of homicides occurred in the victim's home. There's that number again. And let's read about how this individual did his deal. It says Mills, 49, set up a bogus profile on Facebook and stalked his ex before constantly bombarding her with texts and calls. Police later found Miss Smith's body in Mills' Bracton flat where he had left Oasis Stop the Clock playing on repeat. There's that individual right there. Dr. Jane Monckton Smith found that almost every case the killer displayed the obsessive, there's that word again, fixated behavior associated with stalking. Don't he look like a stalker? You tell me. Stalking could present itself in acts as simple as rearranging a victim's garden. We talked about this earlier. About the social services, unwanted gifts, loitering in and around their homes. With Susie Lamplaw Trust, and we already read that. Obsessive fixated behavior that profiles stalking. It's basically the repetitive article of what we just read. So we'll stop there. I do want to show you 53. I won't show you all 53, but I'll show you a list of these serial killers. Some of them I know, and some of them I've never heard of them. It says stalking, following someone secretly to watch them. Serial killer stalkers stalk their victim prior to killing them. And here's some of the stalkers: Pedro Lopez, Demontro de Andes, Ahmad Saradiji, the sorcerer, John Wayne Gacy, Pogo the clown, the killer clown, Constanzo, Robert Kristen Hansen, Larry Dwayne Hall, Watts. There's Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. He would, stalk out his victims and then murder them and whoever else was in the home. The Hillside Strangler. Like I said, some of these I've never heard of. BTK, Dennis Rader, Bound, Torture, Kill. It makes you wonder, like, if anybody's watching you. Have you ever thought or felt like somebody was watching you? The Taco Bell Strangler? Never heard of him. Wonder what that is. Let's check this out. See if they let you read about it. Well, they do. Henry Louis Wallace, the Taco Bell Strangler. Says American serial killer and rapist known as the Taco Bell Strangler, Wallace confessed to the murders of 10 women in Charlotte, North Carolina. He would rape, strangle, or stab his victim prior to murdering them. Wallace was a supervisor at Taco Bell. Some of his victims were his employees at Taco Bell in Charlotte. In 1997, Wallace was convicted of 9 counts of murder and was sentenced to 9 death sentences. Henry Louis Wallace is awaiting execution at the Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. Wow. See what his childhood was like. That's interesting. He was a manager at Taco Bell, and he would rape, stab before murdering. Look at all these people. Baton Rouge serial killer. I think I heard of him. Yeah, I just saw a documentary on this guy, Roy Lewis Norris. Toy box. I thought a toy box like a kid toy box. It wasn't like that at all. It was basically a shed that he had converted into his torture chamber where he would bind his victims and keep them in there and torture them and murder them. He basically discarded those bodies around his house. Very sick. I've heard of railway killers. It's interesting how they give these individuals nicknames. If Brian is convicted, I wonder what nickname they're going to give him. Because everybody gets a nickname. I've heard of Albert Fish. Okay. So, is voyeurism. How does it lead to stalking? Voyeurism can start at a very young age. Voyeurism, you get curious, you go next door, you live next door to a little girl, 13 years old, you start getting curious, you start peeping over the fence, you start peeping through the fence, you start looking in her window at night, just trying to get a peep, being a little pervert that you are. Not everybody does this, but I've known a lot of people that did this. Voyeurism can be placing a camera in a dressing room. In the early, back when the internet was first kicking off, I don't know, I was surfing something. Maybe I was looking for clothing or something, but I ran across a website and it was called upskirt.com or something like that. I was like, what the hell is this? So I started looking at the website, and it basically was where people would record women like walking up the stairs or, you know, eating across from them and just trying to catch a peep of their panties or whatever, their butt. And I thought, man, this has to be illegal. This can't be right. But, I'm sure it's gotten worse than that. Voyeurism is basically parking somewhere and watching someone. Stalking, on the other hand, is when you make contact with the individual somehow where they know that you are violating their privacy, so to speak. Like, let's say that you break up with somebody and you both work out at the same gym. You wait and see when she shows up, her schedule. She hasn't changed it. So you arrive and you make her life miserable by being there. You used to go to this restaurant together. Gosh, excuse me. Um, and you show up. You make your presence known, even though you may or may not say a word. Um, and in the Idaho 4 case, you know how it was stated early on that they went to that vape shop and they were discussing with the employee about one of the victims having a stalker. They didn't go into details. They didn't really go into details about um, a live stalker, a stalker on campus, or just someone that was always around. And like it says, a stalker can be just standing on the street watching the house. I mean, what are you going to do? Call the police and say, hey, that dude over there just watching my house? The police might ask him to leave, and that's probably it. I believe, and this is my own belief, that in those 12 times, it was mentioned that he was pulled over a couple times by the house. One for not having a seatbelt on, and he was obviously pulled over enough that the police department would have known his name, or at least the officers. Because it's a small area and you get pulled over enough or somebody sees your vehicle constantly creeping, they're gonna be like, okay, what's this dude doing? What's he doing over here? If he lives in Washington, what's he doing over here in Moscow? Was he physically going up to the house and peeping? I mean, when it got dark, did he sit there and sit back behind in the trees looking in the window? Did he sit in his car with binoculars or his phone on Zoom and sit there and watch the girls? Did he memorize their work schedule? Did he memorize the party schedule? Did he know who was there, who wasn't there, what time they were going to be there? Did he memorize the vehicles? They said it takes a brave person to go into that house when there were that many vehicles out front. But if you're stalking the residents or you're a voyeur, you're going to know whose vehicles are whose. And by process of elimination, the Range Rover appears and the other car leaves, so there must be the same person parking in the same parking spot. I mean, people aren't stupid. If they're really going to look into people's lives that big, they're not dumb. And this guy supposedly was not very ignorant. He obviously had intelligence of how to survey people, time frames. I mean, if you're really interested in somebody or they've given you an inkling that you could have a shot, maybe you took that as, wow, I need to know more about these people. Need to know more about this girl, this person. You know, um, one of the victim's father said that he believes that the people were targeted because the killer were jealous of their lifestyle. I don't I don't agree with that. I don't. Never in all the serial killers that I've studied, researched, other than possibly Elliot Rodger, and I'm sure there's some more, but this case doesn't seem like it was an act of jealousy. It seems more like an act of vengeance, revenge, anger. But what was that anger about? What was the revenge factor for? When you're watching somebody, you can tell a lot about them by their nonverbals. Have you ever people watched in the mall? Have you ever went to the grocery store and sat in your car while you're waiting for people to come back out? You can tell a lot about people by their nonverbals. Sometimes you watch people and they don't even realize they're being watched. You can tell a lot about somebody. And I'm just taking this into context of what we're talking about. Don't get it twisted. But let's say he became fixated on one of the roommates. Well, he had to realize, was this person physically fit? Did they have any handicaps? What were their weaknesses? When would be the opportunity to commit this crime where he would have the advantage? What could he do so that the odds were in his favor, not in the favor of the people that lived in that house? Because you think about that. Are you going to go into a house where you believe that everybody in there works out, is physically fit, and can beat your drug addict ass up? I mean, seriously, are you going to go in a house like that? Excuse my language, but seriously, are you gonna chance it where all the girls are like bodybuilders and strong as hell, and they're able to kick your ass and take the knife from you and use it on you and whoop your ass? Possibly not. So you have to pick out the time where you're the most in control. the time where you have the advantage. And I believe that's why he took between the 2 and 5 a.m. time frame to establish this, because during that time frame you're not at your clearest thinking wise. I used to work nights, and I'm not saying everybody's like me, don't get it twisted. But I used to work nights, and from 3 to 5, that was the sleepiest time of the night. And I know my sleep cycle is between 5 and 7. So if you're watching a place, you're going to figure out, okay, this person goes to sleep at this time. And you probably watch it all night long, just sitting there watching it, seeing how many times the bathroom light comes on. How many times do they let the dog out? How many times is there any kind of activity in the house? And you memorize the details. It wasn't, okay, this is my first night watching this house, and I'm going to go ahead and go do what I'm doing. Even though the coroner said it was a very sloppy and messy crime scene, and it was very bloody, I don't believe that there's any such thing as a perfect killing. I mean, I would think that all of them are pretty messy. That all of them are pretty gruesome. That's part of the plan, wouldn't you think? That's part of the thrill of it all for the individual committing these crimes. So he's stalking, he's looking on social media. He may have seen the Instagram post about, it's a great feeling spending time with these wonderful people. But I don't really remember if there was any post on there about her leaving to Texas. How would he have known that? Did he know that she wasn't in town for like 2 weeks leading up to the killings? Did he know that she was at her home? Did he go and stalk her home? Has his vehicle been caught on any cameras around her neighborhood at her hometown? Has the vehicle been caught in the neighborhood to match up the 12 other times that he pinged off the towers? Because if all these things match up, then you gotta look at the facts. Hey, you pinged here, you were on the camera around this area. What was up? Hey, we saw your Elantra in Coeur d'Alene or Rathdrum or whatever that town's called. What's up with this? What were you doing here? You got some explaining to do. How come you were in these areas with no real reason to be over here? How can you explain your vehicle being on camera and whatnot? You don't think they went that deep? You don't think that they even went as far as going to Boise or wherever the other ones were from? If not going, maybe they called around and had other agencies looking at their cameras, making sure they didn't catch him on their cameras or vehicle. Maybe that's what they've seen all this time as his digital footprints of his stalking and voyeurism that led to him being identified as the perpetrator, where they can match up the evidence without a reasonable doubt so that the jury will understand that this is the guy. There's no other scenario that could override the fact that this is the guy. While running, was he running around the 1122 King Road house? Is there camera footage with him running anywhere near the house? Was he caught on camera anywhere? I mean, you have to look at a lot of camera footage to identify certain people. Hey, is that him? If it is, what's he doing running at 9 o'clock on Taylor Avenue? Is that him? What's he doing running on Walenta Drive? Is that him? Walking, dressed all in black, creeping on King Road? You know, the sad part is that there's a lot of individuals that look the same these days. Case in point, I just went to a store, and it seems like most younger individuals all wear the same hairdo these days. It's either the Edgar look or that Patrick Mahomes curly kind of bowl look. And it's hard to tell people apart. I could have swore that this guy that was at the store, the cashier, was one of my clients, and he wasn't. When I got up there, his name was totally different than any name that I attached him with. But it's easy to mistake people too, you know? It's easy to mistake them based on their stature, their eyebrows, their hairdo. You know, like I stated in another video, you know, you could see a car wreck. 4 people could see the car wreck, and you're going to get 4 different stories. You're going to get 4 different explanations, how it happened, what they saw, who was at fault, and so on and so on. So the fact that you only heard one person describing this individual in the house that we've been told, that is kind of, I mean, it's evidence, but unless Bethany heard the same thing, like if she heard, hey, I'm here to help you, or she heard the whimpering or the crying or the dog barking. I mean, she's on the first floor. How could she really hear all that? Even though it could have been loud, they could have been texting back and forth. Hey, did you hear that? The dude just said, hey, I'm here to help you. All the crime could have been text back and forth. We don't know that because there's a gag order. I mean, that sounds reasonable. You know, you're not wanting to go out there and confront the guy, so you're going to text the only person that's answering you back. Hey, you understanding what I'm hearing? You're hearing what I'm hearing? And if you think that Brian was the only one that was stalking or voyeurism on these girls, you're naive. You're very naive. One thing, a campus full of fraternity guys who drink and drug and are in their prime and are young, you don't think they attended some parties at that place and they became fixated or infatuated with one of the roommates? Boyfriend or not. You're like, okay, well, your boyfriend isn't here. That means that while I'm at this party, I can chill with you. I can make you laugh. I can flirt with you. I can do whatever. Because people don't have the same moral they used to. You used to could leave your significant other alone and they'd they'd honor you when you weren't there. But nowadays, these younger generation, they don't honor their partners. They could be hooking up and be kissing on their boyfriend tomorrow or in a couple of hours. There's no loyalty in the game, so to speak. So, was somebody fixated on one of the roommates? Were they wanting more than just the casual hookup? In their mind, did they get obsessed on one of the roommates? Did they stalk them because they wanted more from them than just a casual hookup? There's no judgment here. There's nothing wrong with casually hooking up. Everybody does it. Everybody's done it. But some people you casually hook up with, they can't take rejection, or they can't take, hey, it is what it is. Well, my boyfriend comes down, hey, you don't call me, you don't text me. If you come to the parties, you act like we don't know each other. Maybe that's what angered somebody. Maybe the party they had the night before, maybe one of the roommates had a significant other there and they blew the person off and they couldn't take it. Maybe they were in love. Love and lust is pretty different. And people that are young, they don't identify that very well. So to somebody lusting after somebody, they might think it's love. They see the object of their affection with somebody else. Maybe it wasn't even their boyfriend. Maybe it was somebody else's turn. And the fact that they saw or they knew stuff that they shouldn't have known about these four, and they just had enough. But that's presumptive, though. That's speculating. That's a hypothesis because there's nothing to back that up other than the wounds. So if you say those wounds were tears and they were very deep and very, one of the roommates supposedly had her face undescribable. One had blunt force trauma. You don't know. But I can tell you that it wasn't just a casual blow off. How do I know that? Because there has to be an escalating factor. There has to be an opportunity. There has to be a fixation or obsession that is not being met, especially since we're saying that Brian did it. He's an ex drug addict. So obviously he's obsessive and fixated on getting pleasure. So whatever it is that he fixates his mind to, whether it be his studies, whether he becomes obsessive in his cleaning or staying up late at night or these types of things, he goes all out. He's not just gonna do it half-ass and well, this is my first time to ever become obsessive on anything, so let me just half-ass do it. No. So that's the type of individual that we're looking for. Other people get fixated and obsessed, just like the supposed killer, on certain areas of the case. The rideshare driver, the DoorDash driver, Nobody knows if these people were interrogated to the nine. Just because their names haven't really been released or they have no story to tell that you don't know about. Everything just seems so circumstantial because of the timelines. Because when I first heard about this, I thought, how in the hell did a DoorDash get there at 4 o'clock? He supposedly gets there at 4:05. How did they not see each other? How did they not cross paths? Because that was the biggest mystery. And then I thought, could it have been one and the same? But you see how the speculatory mind goes? Because there's no evidence there to back that up. So it can't be unless they do have evidence. Then they said 9 to 10 minute time frame. How the hell did that happen? That would have had to been quick. But then there's been creators that have timed that 9 to 10 minute, and it's actually quite a bit of time. So be aware of your surroundings. Make sure that you have adequate protection in case somebody does break into your home. A lot of states do have the castle doctrine, and you don't have to have reasonable retaliation. You don't have to barely do enough to stop them. You can shoot to kill if somebody's in your home and you fear imminent danger. Stand your ground laws. There's states that have those. Watch your surroundings. If you're getting in a vehicle and you're a female, get in on the driver's side. Put everything in as quick as possible. Get in, lock your doors, and then worry about sorting things out. Don't be distracted in the store by being on your cell phone. Don't be so distracted that you don't notice people walking in after you, people walking next to you, watching you, and leaving after you. Make sure that before you get out of your vehicle and unlock the door, that there's not a blind spot where there's a vehicle that could potentially take you and nobody would see. Preferably park near a camera. Um, and have some kind of defense to protect yourself. Like I said, it's been proven that most killers or abductors, they use distractions and opportunity to commit their crime. A lot of times they might not even want to commit a crime and they see somebody slipping and bam, they go after them and grab the moment. So be careful. Don't put too much information on social media. Make sure you don't put your kids on social media. Don't place their names. Don't put your addresses. Heck, I wouldn't even put where I worked. 12 gauge isn't really my name, but it's a cool moniker. And who am I afraid of that's going to do something to me? Not many people, but I still don't want people to know my name. It's not important. Either you like my content or you don't. My real name doesn't matter. But there's a lot of individuals that or online that are just preying daily, hunting, lurking for their next victim. Be very mindful of your surroundings because you don't know if there's another Brian Koberger out there or some other type of killer. If he is the one, if he is actually the perpetrator. He's in jail for the crime, so that's why I'm assuming that he did it. And until he's found out otherwise, he's still in jail for it. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. And if you like what you heard, please let me know. Leave some comments. Send your buddies my way. Let them see what I'm about. And hopefully one day we can have a live. Take care of yourselves. Life is fragile. The people you love need to be protected at all costs. And always be mindful of your surroundings. Voyeurism and stalking are one and the same, and they lead to 94% fatality. Peace out.